A very warm good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone joining us from different areas and regions all over the globe. We are so elevated to be hosting another exclusive webinar on skill based hiring using AI. Well, AI is taking turmoil everywhere. My name is Ridhima, and I'll be moderating this session with two of the industry experts who have spent like a decade into this domain. We have found out that our hiring processes are filled with practices that are no longer effective. From resume screening to interviews and reference checks, it's likely we have been doing these things for so long, we don't question whether they are working or not working. But recently, what we have found out that there have been a lot of candidate shortages, changing industry norms, and appetite for remote work taking off. The time has now come to question whether these old hiring methods are working or not. Look at the ones like accessing skills. Well, skill-based hiring might completely sound obvious, but mastering the sound requires a fundamental rethink. Don't worry, we are here for. In this webinar, we are going to discuss how to approach skill-based hiring at your organization, what are the ways to conduct them, and tools and techniques which can future-proof your recruitment, resulting in better hires. RChilli believe that every minute that you spend should be utilized in the proper manner. That's why we are here for. And I'm so happy to be doing it with two people who have spent so many years actually finding out solutions for how we can help you. So first we have Mr. Lovepreet Dhaliwal, who is currently working as President Sales at RChilli organization. Welcome.
Thank you, Ridhima. Thank you for having me.
And second, we have Josh Adam, who is currently serving as Director ERP segment. So my first question that I have for the panel is, how have the hiring practices changed over time?
What we've seen in the past decade or so is that the way we used to hire doesn't really work anymore. And this is more due to the ever-changing environment that we're in, all of the external factors, the way the labor market is going, and mostly because of the labor force that we want to hire these days. So it used to be the case that you could put out a job advert, you would get a few resumes, you would sort through them and pick out the top 5 and maybe be done with it. But now the things that you used to shortlist on, they've changed. So if you look at a person's resume, they may or may not even have a degree in it, right? They may or may not have worked or graduated from like an Ivy League school or something like that. So the focus now lies more on what the person can actually do when they're hired at the job, what sort of skills they possess. So that determines their success in the role more than just their credentials. So this is the biggest shift we've seen in the industry happen. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're talking about skills-based hiring. So what can we do about it? What are your thoughts on this, Josh?
You've covered a lot of good points. I think one of the other key pieces to understand is that technology has changed drastically over the past 10 years. And 10 years ago, you didn't have the ability to do skills-based hiring because the information you were collecting, from candidates, whether you were looking over their resume, I mean, simply put, think about it. 10 years ago, if somebody had 3 jobs in 5 years, people automatically considered them a job hopper. Nowadays, that's commonplace. The technology has definitely changed to allow for skills-based hiring, but more importantly, the mentality of those doing the hiring and interviewing has changed drastically as well. I mean, think about it, in our parents' lifetimes, they worked one job for 40 plus years. Not the case anymore. Employees choose what companies they work for based on, the culture fit, the environment. And that's also the same reason they choose to leave.
Yeah. And we've seen that happen more and more, especially in the past 5 years, I would say. Especially since
absolutely.
the COVID slowdown and everything.
Well, especially since then, because, I mean, you look at the COVID hit, everybody went work from home. And huge number of people realized, hey, I can do everything at work that I, did at the office just as easily from home. I'm not having to pay gas money to travel in, not having to get dressed up, spend hours on my commute every day, etc. And I'm actually more effective. And I've seen, many times where companies do that push to get back to the office, and all of a sudden now their workforce is leaving to go to other remote positions because they don't want to go back to the office. So that's another, piece that's really causing the whole employment or the crush on employees.
That brings me down to another question. What challenges are the recruiting companies facing these days?
For me, I think the biggest challenge is we are very much in an employee-driven marketplace. It's no longer the candidates having to sell themselves to the company to get hired. It's the companies having to sell themselves to the candidates so the candidate chooses to work there. That is, one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now. And it's, when it comes down to it, finding the right candidates, there are many aspects. The skills-based hiring is just the tip of the iceberg, finding the right candidates to fit that position. But then they've also, the company branding, the company mentality, all of that plays a role. Even how long the interview process has taken plays a role in whether that candidate accepts or chooses to accept that position or not. What do you think, Lovepreet?
Yeah, that's definitely it. So there's a talent shortage. There simply aren't as many people applying to jobs. And once they do apply, you don't really get to interview them because they just fall through, or they have found someone else who's offering them a better package, better cultural fit. So
Offering
you're
it
exactly
quicker.
right. The power is more with the applicants these days, with the people getting hired. And the competition now is how do you become better as a brand at attracting talent, retaining talent? Like, what is your USP as a company? It used to be that, being a big brand, having all these practices was enough. Now that's common these days. So what sets you apart as a company? Is it your hiring process, right? Is it your application process? Is it how easy it is for people to find you, to apply, to get visibility into that hiring process? So before I'm spending 10-15 minutes filling out your complete questionnaire, do I get to see what would be the next steps in the hiring process, right? What would happen when I click submit here? So those sort of expectations are there these days, and that's what the challenge is. And this is compounded by increasing skill requirements. You need people who are better skilled, and also we cannot forget being inclusive and diverse, because you want to ensure as an employer you have a level playing field for anyone that applies. And you cannot let bias creep in any way, shape, or form. And I think these are some of the challenges. These are not all of them, but definitely the bigger ones.
Absolutely.
That brings me down to this one aspect when you talked about, it's more like candidate driven and companies have to brand themselves to get better talent. What does that, instigate now with the changing industry norms that we have?
So the drive behind, this shift to skills-based hiring, so I think it's definitely the labor market. So not a lot of people have degrees, right? Ones who are actively involved in the workforce. So if you go out there and just try to find people with X degree who worked for X number of years of experience at a particular company, you would fail, because the talent force doesn't really have those credentials anymore. And they've had to evolve, right? People have been laid off after decades of working at a company. They've had to upskill, and now they can't go back to school, right? They got bills to pay, but they have certifications, upwork. So we've seen an uptick, especially 2 years ago. We saw an uptick in how many skill-based certifications people were doing. They were doing that because they wanted to, be competitive. They wanted to get their next paying job after they've been laid off. So that is where the real drive is coming in from. So if you go about hiring in the traditional ways, you will fail. Yeah, Josh.
I was going to say, it's also, 20 years ago, the thought was, okay, you need a bachelor's degree in the field that you're wanting to work in. Then it changed into, you just need a bachelor's degree. Because I look back on my college career, and I finished my degree out in business management and management information systems, mainly because I was looking at it in the mindset of I was a chemistry major and realizing, okay, what's this? What am I going to use this for? And so that changed my whole college piece. Nowadays, people just realize, hey, all they need is bachelor's. Doesn't matter, can be underwater basket weaving, can be whatever. But for, degree purposes, most employers want to see college degree. It's the skills that matter, hands down. What skills does that candidate have? And more importantly, though, is I think this is one of the biggest problems, and this might be jumping ahead and touching on a further question. But as I said before, technology has changed. The problem with it is people still, a resume to a candidate, a resume, that resume, they expect that somebody's going to read that resume. They're going to submit their resume, somebody's going to read over it. Doesn't happen. I mean, I can't think of, a single recruiter that's actually read an entire candidate's resume, before their second or third interview. So the ability, to enable that necessary shift, to enable skills-based hiring is having the technology that understands what skills the candidate has based on the resume that they upload so that they can be actively searched across. The problem with that is most parsers on the market only parse what's on the resume. If they don't type that skill out, they don't say agile methodology in their resume, they don't show up on the search. And so that's where the technology really starts to come in, understanding that, hey, if they've worked at this job title, we know that these are the required skills that they have. So even if they didn't say that skill in their resume, they still show up on that search. Technology is the huge part of being able to shift to an accurate skills-based hiring.
Any more comments that you have, Lovepreet?
That's pretty accurate, right? You don't really get to review a resume until it's been captured by your, talent acquisition software that you've, incorporated into your career site or through your ATS. So you don't actually see the document, you just see the data that's been processed. And a lot of times, if you don't mention skills or, if they're not captured accurately, you're doing both yourselves as a hiring manager and also the applicant a disservice. So that's why having a robust system that can give you that metadata about skills, build that relationship out between what job goes into what skill and vice versa, that's critical these days.
What are the top 5 skills that you look forward to while you're hiring anyone?
Every role has different skills that you're going to be looking at. That's not in itself a valid piece. It's more the fact that understanding, normally, most recruiters that I've worked with, they start out their search based on job title. In the past, it was, I need a Java developer. And then the technology allowed them to actually say, I need a Java developer with 10 years of experience. And then being able to filter down like that. Now, the whole goal isn't so much, I don't need a Java developer. I need somebody who knows how to program in Java, who has, the ability to work with agile methodology and also has, XYZ certification. They're not looking, it's gotten to the point where, and when you think about it, job titles themselves, I've seen some crazy job title names. Basically, job titles themselves aren't as descriptive now as they used to be. In a lot of cases, job titles tend to get kind of made up. I've seen some that it's just like, the elephant of data security. What does that mean? And I've actually seen titles like that where people have gone through and just, because titles don't explain your skills, not like they used to. Before it was, okay, I know I keep going back to IT, but that's just, for me, the easiest to go to. Before you had Java developer, you had senior Java developer, so on and so forth. And it kind of scaled up and you knew people would understand the skills in relation. Nowadays, it goes even further. But especially in the IT industry, just having a skill in one language, you've shot yourself in the foot. You might be the best at that language, but how many different programs out there are using a multitude of different computer languages or softwares that you need to have expertise in to be able to work?
What do you think? What are the tools which are needed to actually implement skill-based hiring these days?
So what you want is a robust system that can, not only capture the data that's coming in. So that's step number one. So you need a good parsing engine, something that can give you what's in the resume, but it also gives you, additional metadata about the skills that are there, the job titles, the synonyms, the ontology, their relationship between each other. So that's critical. So that's the core piece of it. Unless you have that, you'll just rely on whatever information is there in the resume, however complete or incomplete it is. Now, having done that, the second piece would be, what do you do with that data, right? How do you search through it? How do you rank it? What is it ranked on? Is it a score? Is it a percentage? What is that score based on? What sort of data elements is it incorporating? Do we have control over those data elements? Can we fine-tune them? Or is it a black box that we have no control over, right? Can we change those weightages around? So the more control the hiring manager has over the sort of data they see, the better the hiring decisions would be.
I have to agree with everything you've said. I mean, when I look at it, it's, to me, step one is being able to fully get, understand what is being seen on the resume and translate that into actionable data that can be used within the search. First and foremost, if you don't have that, we're basically back to the Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
The next piece behind it, though, is, and this is probably, take everything Lovepreet said, but add this on top, is probably the most important aspect of it. Look at how quick, how fast, jobs, roles, technologies, all of that are progressing. Ensuring that whatever tool that you have is continually updating to stay, with the times, as real time as possible. As new skills come out, there are already, new skills, new terminology, new aliases, etc. That has to be updated on a regular basis. Otherwise, if not, let's say you have a company that did it really good off the start, but they haven't done updates. Well, now you're working on data that's, aliases, taxonomies, etc., that are 5+ years old. And so it's not going to work for the, for the present day roles and newer technologies and roles coming available. So, for me, you have to have all of that, but you have to have, be confident that the solution you're using is continually being updated so that it is, valid for today's, jobs, titles, skills, terminologies, etc.
Any two points that you want to talk about which are really important that can be implemented immediately?
For the most part, I deal, as Ridhima said, I deal with our ERP sector. So I'm working with clients who are utilizing Oracle, PeopleSoft, Salesforce, SAP, Workday, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And my main focus right now, I kind of take the simpler, I like to kind of keep it simple in my presentations. My main goal is simply make it as easy as possible for applicants to apply to a position,
Mm-hmm.
followed by making it easy as possible for recruiters to find the most relevant candidates and get them in for an interview. Because not only are we streamlining the application process, but we're ensuring all that data gets into whatever ERP solution in a good, standardized, normalized, searchable format so that those positions can be filled. I know a number of my clients, I met with them at the end of last year, and their KPIs for 2023 were based on the application process taking no more than 30 seconds because their whole goal was eliminate applicant drop-off rate. Reduce applicant drop-off rate, make it as easy as possible for a candidate to go on in and apply. LinkedIn Easy Apply has spoiled a lot of potential candidates out there because they can just go in and click and apply to 5 jobs. Having that functionality on a company's career site is just as important, but making that, making it easy to apply is step 1. Step 2 is making sure that it's easy for the recruiters and talent acquisition personnel at an organization to be able to find those candidates and get them in for interview.
Yeah, so experience is definitely the top factor when you look at this sort of process. What is the candidate experience like? So Josh talked about drop-off, right? Why is that drop-off happening? Because we're asking applicants to fill out information that they have in a document, and they're spending 15 minutes doing that, right? So that's the first big no. The second is, once you have that information, that data. So once you have the data, how do you turn that into information? Because data by itself isn't of much use unless you can draw some actionable insight from it. So that's on the hiring manager side. So someone applies, how do we give them actionable information about what this person's profile is, what is their skill set, what's their expertise, right? So what sort of positions can they be considered for? Are there any future positions that they might be a good fit for? So if you have a skills to job title relationship built out, you can do that career pathing for them. And you can also use it to forecast, okay, we don't have a job for them right now, but we have this job opening up in 6 months that requires this particular skill set. Let's keep this applicant in the applicant pool and reach out to them at a later date. Now, you can only do that if you have good data extracted from their profile and you know what their skill set is, you have that relationship built out. And that's why it's important to have such a system.
That brings me down to one new concept that we have, which is skills taxonomy. Could you please explain that term and what are its use cases?
So skills taxonomy, simply put, is a collection of skills, job titles, their synonyms, their relationship with each other, the parent, child, grandchild hierarchy of it, right? And not only that, so most companies do like a skill to skill or a job title to job title sort of match, but it's important to have a taxonomy that also does cross-functional match. So that would actually tell you what skill is linked to how many jobs here, so and to what degree. So that's also important, and also the vice versa. So what particular job has X number of skills in it, and what sort of expertise a person needs to have in it to be considered proficient or naive or whatever. So that is what a skills taxonomy is, and that's what powers most of the intelligent AI parsing extraction engines these days.
The other piece behind it is that taxonomy provides the recruiters with normalized data to search across. In other words, one of the examples I love using is most taxonomies, they go skills to, general list of skills and skill aliases to a single normalized skill. And they go a general list of job titles and job title aliases to a single normalized job title. I'll use the job title as an example. And that is, how many different ways can you say HR director? And the reason I say that is now imagine if you don't have a taxonomy in place. Let's say you have 10 different candidates. They could have their title as HR director or H.R. space director or human resource director or human resources director or director of human resources or director of HR or director of H.R. So on and so forth. That becomes problematic because if the recruiter is doing a search across the database and they just search HR director, well, they're only going to get the people that said HR director and none of the others. Whereas with the taxonomy in place now, regardless of how they set it on their resume, it's normalized in the database. So one simple search and you're getting all those candidates, as opposed to having to create either a long Boolean search or run 5 or 10 different searches. But as Lovepreet said, the first two that I went over, skills to skill, job titles to job title, that's kind of what was big 10 years ago. Being able to cross those, going job title to skills or skills to job title, is truly probably the most effective and important aspect of a tool that you need in order to implement skills-based hiring. Because as I said earlier, a resume is a document written by a human being meant to be read by another human being. There's lots of inferred information in it. There's lots of information that, basically you have to read between the lines to see. And in the past, if you didn't type that out directly in your resume, the parser wouldn't pick it up. With this type of with this taxonomy backing it, now it doesn't matter if they just said, I am a Java developer. Now we know all the skills that your standard Java developer has. They didn't type any skills out. We're still adding them in because we know what skills are associated with that position, thus making, the ability to, perform skills-based hiring significantly easier. You're limited by what the candidate provides you in the resume. Being able to extract that information in an intelligent manner and turn it from just data into actual usable, actionable information is the key.
So how this skills taxonomy can fit into different businesses?
How can it not? That's really it's one of those pieces. As I said before, companies, recruiters are only having more and more recs that they have to fill. That number is only increasing. The number of candidates per rec is increasing. If they don't have a solution in place that allows them to quickly and easily search, screen through candidates, get them in for, initial calls, interviews, etc., not only is the recruiting process taking much longer, it's causing issues with company branding. It's causing, I know I sit there and I have to laugh because at times I think, if I asked everybody to raise their hands, they would. But how many times have you had some recruiter or headhunter reach out to you because they saw something in your job title, but it really wasn't relevant to anything that you did? And that's part of it. That's just a tool that they're using, thinking that they're getting ahead, but it's actually putting them behind. Because now they're, the ability to actually reach out and read and understand that you're getting the most relevant information from every candidate that applies, that you can take action, search, cross, get them in for interview. That's where we're going. That's where you have to be today in order to streamline your recruitment process, to stay, to keep companies moving. Lovepreet, I'd love to hear what you will add on to that. I know I get on rambles, so I apologize.
No, completely valid points, all of them. So it's definitely the recruitment process right from the get-go, right from the first moment someone applies to a position with your company. But to add on to that, it's also for future roles, right? What sort of skill gaps will you see in your organization, maybe 6 months, 1 year down the line, right? How do you plan for that? So that sort of workforce planning, skill development for internal employees. Can you help them to be better at their jobs? Is there a career development or a skill development path that you can build out for them internally? And you could do that only once you have this information about, okay, we have a person working as, let's say, a Java developer, right? What sort of career path do they have with our organization the next 5 years? And to get there, what sort of skills do they need to acquire, right? And you can map this out for them and help them to move up in their career path. And for you as an organization, you would get a resource that's not only growing with you, but also is engaged, because they know that this company knows what they're doing. They have a clearly defined career path for me to progress into, and that's where the taxonomy comes into play.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be coming back again in July with another striving topic that we want to take up. And thank you, Lovepreet and Josh, for your valuable insights.
Ridhima, thank you very much for the invite to this. It was a pleasure chatting with you and everybody on the call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Ridhima. Thanks, everyone.